This is a video about solving one-step equations. An equation is basically a number sentence that states that two expressions are equal using, big surprise, an equal sign. An equation is a lot like a balanced scale, like the one that you see here. So you shouldn't add this to your notes, you should just take a look at what I'm saying. This scale is balanced. One side has a bunch of yellow weights, the other one has fewer yellow weights and a blue weight. A question that you might ask is, how many yellow weights weigh the same as one blue weight? This would be the same as if you had an equation with x in it, saying, what does x equal? So to figure out how many yellow weights weigh the same as one blue weight, we would want the blue weight to be alone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of a bunch of the yellow weights. And notice, as soon as I do that, I got rid of 5, the scale becomes unbalanced. So in order to balance it again, what I'm going to need to do is also take away yellow weights. So I took away 2, 3, 4, 5. And as soon as I took away the same number of yellow weights, my scale balanced out again. So a balanced scale is like an equation, and if you unbalance the scale on one side, to balance it back, you have to do the same thing on the other side. So when we're working with equations, we're going to use one big rule that I'm sure you've heard before. Do to one side what you do to the other. So now we're going to solve some equations. So first of all, you need to know that solving means find the value of the variable by isolating it. Isolate means get alone on one side of the equation. So, for example, I have example 1, solve the equation. And there are lots of different directions that you'll see throughout this video that all mean the same thing. Find the value of the variable by isolating it on one side of the equation. So number 1, we have x minus 8 equals 17. And the reason that x is not isolated in this equation is because there's this negative 8 in the equation. So we need to somehow get rid of this negative 8. And the way that we're going to get rid of the negative 8 is we're going to counteract it with a positive 8. Because if you add positive 8 to this side of the equation, those 8s will go away. But because we did it to one side, we need to do it to the other side to balance. So now it's like a big addition problem. Got the 8s went away, so now I have x alone. And then the equal sign drops down from right here. And on the right side, we have 17 plus 8, which is 25. So this is our answer because now x is alone. So notice the way that we got rid of this negative 8 was by counteracting it with its opposite, a positive 8. And we had to balance the other side by adding 8 as well. If we try another one, we see we've got negative 5 equals n plus 13. We need to get rid of this 13, and the way that we're going to get rid of this positive 13 is by doing the opposite. We're going to get rid of positive 13 by subtracting 13 on each side, and notice how I'm doing this up and down. And so when we do this, what we're basically doing is making a big addition problem. So the negative 5 and the negative 13, we've got two negatives, so we're going to add them to get 18 and keep the sign, it stays negative. The 13 and the negative 13 cancel each other out, and that's what we want to have happen. The equal sign drops down, and then the n is by itself on the right. So we see that negative 18 equals n, or if you like to have n on the left, you could say that n equals negative 18. In this third equation, we've got negative 5 plus z equals 4, and we need to be able to get rid of that negative 5. So to counteract it, what we need to do is add 5 to each side. And again, we're going to have like a big addition problem. The 5s cancel each other out, which is what we want, leaving us with just a z on the left, and then 4 plus 5 is positive 9, and that's our answer. So that's what happens when the variable isn't alone because something is being added or subtracted to it. Now we're going to look at what happens when something is being multiplied or divided. So in this next one, when we're going to solve the equation, we have negative 25n equals 275. So in this one, the n isn't alone because it's being multiplied by negative 25. So the way that you undo multiplication, the way that you counteract multiplication is by dividing. They're opposites and they undo each other. So in order to get rid of that negative 25, we're going to have to divide this side by negative 25. Because when we divide by negative 25, these cancel each other out, which gives us a 1n, and you know that 1n is the same thing as just n. Now I'm dropping my equal sign down, and we know that to balance this, if we're going to divide by negative 25 there, we also need to divide by negative 25 here. So I happen to know that when you divide 275 by negative 25, you get negative 11. So your answer for this problem would be n equals negative 11. So just a little hint about this before we go. For a variable to be alone, it must have a coefficient of 1. And you accomplish that by dividing by whatever the coefficient is. When you divide something by itself, you get that 1. We'll take a look at 2 more examples and then we'll be done. So in this next problem, we have to solve for t. And t has a coefficient of negative 2/3, a fraction. So we know that what we have to do is divide by negative 2/3. But the thing about dividing by a fraction is that that really means that you should multiply by the reciprocal of that fraction. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to move this problem over here so I have a little more room. I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 3/2. So on the left side, the 3 and the 3 reduce, and the 2 and the 2 reduce, and the negative times the negative makes a positive, so all I've got left is a t. And then on the right, I'm going to make this 8 over 1, and I'm going to reduce the 8 to a 4 and the 1 to a 2, I'm sorry, the 2 to a 1. So I have 4 times negative 3 is negative 12, and I have solved my equation. So whenever you have a fraction in front of the variable, what you want to do is multiply both sides of the equation by the reciprocal. Finally, we have an example of an equation where the variable is being divided by a number. So in order to undo that division, what we're going to have to do is multiply. So to undo the division by 3, we're going to multiply both sides of the equation by 3. Because whenever you divide, to undo it, you multiply. So this is like multiplying by 3 over 1. So you can see that what happens is that the 3's cancel out, leaving you on the right-hand side with just an m. And over on the left, you've got 3 times negative 5. That's negative 15. So negative 15 is the value of m. Or you can just say m equals negative 15. So we're done. That's how you can solve equations with one step by either adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing.